Vaslav. Agonizingly slowly, Vaslav went up, higher and higher, until he came to the top and stayed there. It seemed like an eternity before he felt a tremble and thundered down at dizzying speed. There was screaming everywhere. His stomach seemed to get pushed up into his throat and his heart was pounding in his head. He felt dizzy when he flipped over, with a feeling of sensation won. Then, in a flash of panic, he saw the ground approaching and squeezed his eyes shut. Just in time, his car braked and slowly came to a halt. Relieved, he took a deep breath and looked around. The girl sitting next to him was white as a sheet and looked anything but happy. Better get out, he thought, before that goes wrong. As soon as the bar went up, he slipped out of his seat, but had overestimated himself. His legs felt like two springs, and he staggered a few steps until a firm hand grabbed him by the collar. Vaslav turned his head around, trying to laugh bravely, but the roller coaster man pushed him roughly aside, having only eyes for the girl, who was no longer able to contain herself. Cursing, the man shot past him. It seemed Vaslav wiser not to look back, as his own stomach was not exactly in optimal condition too. As he descended the stairs, the smell of popcorn hit him. Food helps an unsettled stomach, his mother always says, and she should know. Vaslav was glad it was Monday evening. That meant that his mother was out babysitting, and therefore didn't notice his sneaking out, which he never would have agreed to. As it was also drizzling, there weren't that many people at the fair, which Vaslav liked. On crowded evenings, he never felt comfortable, and was always a little apprehensive that older boys might pick him out for a good joke. With a bucket of popcorn the size of his head, of which he wondered if the contents would fit his stomach, he scanned the fair for the next attraction. He didn't have much, so careful consideration had to be given to what was worth spending his money on. The woman without a body was back. He chuckled at the memory of how last year he got to his knees to find out how the trick worked, but to his surprise, he hadn't discovered it, and at one point even started to have doubts. Hey, but come on, how could somebody live without a body? He walked on, and was just getting a bit annoyed with the rain when he discovered, between two attractions, an almost hidden tent. Above the entrance there was a sign that said, "Curiosity Cabinet." Vaslav's eyes began to widen and twinkle. For real? His secret wish? Eagerly he read the text underneath. Nature's failures, monstrosities, monsters and worse. What the hell could be worse? He wondered, and quickly pulled out the entrance fee, shoving it in front of the man in the booth, who uninterestingly took the money and nodded towards a faded curtain behind him, apparently the entrance. Oh, nice and inviting, thought Vaslav, as he pushed back the curtain and entered the tent. It was so dark inside that Vaslav had to wait a while before his eyes became accustomed to the darkness. Immediately, a feeling of disappointment followed. There were only 5 displays. Is that all? He thought. The wooden planks creaked under his sneakers as he walked to the first display and leaned forward. Behind the glass was an example of skin tissue, and next to it a larynx and a kidney, all made of plaster. What a fake, he muttered. "We have those at school too." In the next display were several examples of venereal diseases. "Boring," he thought, but couldn't help chuckling at the sight of a row of penises, until something creaked behind him. He turned around with a jerk, but he was alone. "Hey, come on, we're not gonna be a scary cat." He clenched his fist in his coat pockets. From the third display, a Papuan skull, stuck with shells and feathers, grinned at him, and next to it was a shriveled human head from the Amazon. The lips and the eyes were soon shut with vibra. A shiver went down his spine. He could already feel the needle pulling the thread through his own eyelids. Would they do that when the victim was still alive? He became aware of the sound of heavy rain on the tent campus and pulled his coat closer around him. Had it gotten colder inside, or was he imagining it? In the next display, 4 glass jars were lined up in which baby corpses floated. One had 2 heads. Or did 2 heads have 1 body? Next to it was a baby with 3 eyes staring at him, followed by a baby with an open back, and the 4th had his brains floating like a big blob next to its head. They were so old that pieces of the skin had peeled off and formed a dirty film on the bottom. The popcorn in Vaslav's stomach started to play up a bit. Suddenly he didn't feel like eating the rest, and quickly went on to the last exhibit. In the back of the tent stood a large display in the glow of a few measly light bulbs. The lighting was barely sufficient, but Vaslav realized this was done on purpose. He leaned curiously forward when his foot stepped on an electric wire, which immediately slipped away, and with it Vaslav's balance. The popcorn flew out of the bucket, and just in time he managed to stabilize himself by clinging to the display. It took at least a minute for him to catch his breath. His heart was pounding in his throat, and it got worse when he saw the filthy mess on the glass. His mess of popcorn with melted butter. Oh, Jesus. Thank God there was no one else inside, and he quickly put out his handkerchief. He needed water, lots of water, but there was no tap. That's why he spat in the handkerchief. However, the result only got worse. Frantically, he rubbed the window harder until suddenly the cupboard creaked loudly. Startled, he withdrew his hand. On the right side, he saw a gap between the glass panels. Did he cause that? "Oh, I gotta get out of here," he thought. But he didn't move and remained transfixed. Before him stood a figure. Vaslav's eyes went over the sign. Priest with a sacrificial knife made of human hand. His gaze went up. The creature had a knife in its hand. The handle of the knife was indeed a human hand, a real human grasping hand. Vaslav's jaw dropped. How would that feel? Like you shook hands with a dead man? Imagine touching that. He started to smile and already could hear the girls at school screaming. Oh, what a scare it would be if he... Should he? Under his jacket? As quick as lightning, he squeezed his hand through the crack to grab the knife. But a claw-like hand knife closed around Vaslav's hand. Ice cold. With a shout, he tried to withdraw his hand, but it got stuck behind the edge of the display. The creature in the closet started to move. Did it lose its balance? Or was it alive? In a flash, he saw nearly closed eyes in the parchment face, which seemed to look straight at him. But above all, he noticed teeth, razor-sharp teeth. He jerked with all his might, and then the cabinet began to totter, till it tumbled over. All Vaslav could do was shrink as much as possible as he was hit by a rain of glass. "Hey, look, what a creep," said the girl as she glanced at the display. "Your brother?" the boy asked boldly. Immediately he received a poke in the ribs. "Hey, don't do that, otherwise I'll show you something much more monstrous." "Well, I saw that monster long ago," laughed the girl. "Up close." She pressed herself against the boy. "And it isn't that monstrous," she said softly.
"We're going to close,"
the man called, looking in through the curtain. Startled, the girl and the boy separated. "He was speaking," the boy grunted and pulled his pants straight. Meanwhile, the girl leaned forward and narrowed her eyes. "Say, doesn't he remind you of someone?" The boy remarked. "Doesn't he look like that kid from last year? You know, the one with the Russian name who disappeared." Vaslav, triumphantly the boy remembered and grinned proudly. The lights went on and the girl shrieked. "I think they mean it," the boy concluded. "Let's go, before they come alive here and grab you." He put on two crazy eyes and raised his hands. The girl screamed again, after which they fled the room hand in hand. But before the girl disappeared through the curtain, she looked over her shoulder one more time. The man waited for them to leave before going in to make sure that nothing had been broken. He stopped in front of the large display and said, "Oh, they'll be playing with this little monster tonight." The little mummy in the closet stared back without responding. The thick layers over the leathery face made the features almost unrecognizable. Almost, because there still was something of a bitter smile to see. The body was bent slightly forward, and one hand was raised, into which a knife stuck, with a handle made of a real human hand. At least that's what the sign claimed. The man drummed twice on the glass with his fingertips, which he did every night before going to sleep, and mumbled, "Good that we travel on tomorrow." The girl's remark had reminded him of that fateful day a year ago. But things could have turned out worse, because frankly, the little one has turned out a lot better than the big one had ever been. Little did the man know that he had surpassed the boy's deepest wish. Vaslav had not only seen the curiosity cabinet up close, he even had become one with it.